Mm, mm. There we go. A small group tonight. Great. Wonderful. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Good to see
Um,
you.
All right. Well, welcome to our BCE. These are monthly gatherings we've had for about 5 years, and we welcome whoever shows up, and we have sort of an idea of what we're going to do, and then we see where we get taken by the conversation. And yeah. And so I think a couple of you are new. And you would like to just introduce yourself and just let us know like where you are and anything that feels important to you about yourself.
Yeah, hi, Ian Desker. Based in the UK, west of London, Ascot, if you know where that is. So it's a bit late here, but yeah, I've been, I guess, in the coaching world for about a year and a half now. So set up on my own in March last year.
Okay, wonderful. I just flew back from London this afternoon. So,
Okay.
uh, yeah.
So you've got the jet lag to go through then, yeah.
Yeah, the gigantic 1 hour jet lag.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's Darcy. Welcome. Okay. Hmm. There we go. Anybody else want to check in with anything that feels important to you right now about how you're doing or what's up? Hmm. Oh, good. A quiet group. All right. So we had we had these themes designed for we've done these, like I said, for 5 years. We had these themes designed for the year, and then for a number of reasons, we sort of let that go. But the mechanisms behind our platform keeps telling us we're still on the themes. So we decided to just have fun with that, and rather than try to go back to our original intention, just see what arises in the moment around the theme. So the theme for today is embodiment. And the where I'd like to begin, and then we'll do a little bit of a guided meditation. So I just want to set some context for that, and then we'll see that where that takes us. Um, Erland, this might mean something to you, but I was up in London for a gathering of this group called Thinkers 50, being honored as part of their first inaugural class of the top 50 coaches in the world from their perspective. So I was one of the honorees. And we were meeting a place called Guild Hall, which is a 1,000-year-old building, it's gigantic. We were having this, but a lot of the conversation there's a lot of very well-known, thank you, a lot of very well-known authors and professors and but it was set up in this really old world style of being lectured at for 2 days on the stage, basically with people selling books and sharing cliches and things you could. Anyway, so many wonderful people, but I just felt what a squandering of such talent to just have this old kind of format. But then those of us that were more rebellious, and you can imagine I was one of the early adopters of that stance, started having other conversations because we were really bored with the official program. And so one of the conversations we started asking about how we were doing in sort of these times, and two of these people live in the US, so I was particularly curious how they were experiencing this current time. And one of the things that came to me that we're in this building of all this ancient stone, and um, and I just went back to an old idea or insight from Brian Swim, who's a cosmologist. He used to work with Matthew Fox. And in one of our conversations, which he later put in his book, he talked a lot about um, as near as we can tell, there's a finite number of atoms in the universe. They just keep moving around and taking different forms. So we're in a hall that is made up of rock and wood and things. And I said, but all of the things you see in this gigantic room. I mean, you can't even imagine how big this room is. Uh, some of those same cells are in us, and we have this illusion that we're separate, and that I'm me and you're you, and it's we and them, and us and them, and there's a rock and there's a tree and there's a car, and that somehow these things are isolated objects. And we had this fascinating conversation held by these by this space about, and then even the people that were kind of in this swirl of pontifications and ego, and they too were part of us. They were our shadow, right? We're all part of the same kind of system. And then I want to marry that with another key observation, which uh, it- one of my favorite pastimes is walking. And I notice, or here in Amsterdam, where I live now, cycling, I would say about a third of the people have some form of earphones on. That's completely unsafe and wrong. And most of them have some involvement with their phone. And nobody's paying attention to anything but themselves and the world they curate with their music or podcast. And so what I started to, and I find that very distressing. And and um, and so I started to think about one of the things we've lost is the first piece, the sensation that we're constantly grounded and made up of cells which are replenishing themselves every second in our bodies. But those cells have been floating around the universe for billions of years and have taken all kinds of forms. And so, in some ways, when we're mad at somebody, we're mad at part of ourselves because there's some cells that we might be sharing. But also, then when we isolate ourselves in these little worlds and these little bubbles, that we have no connection to anything but the world that we've created, which exaggerates this sense of I'm this here and you all are out there and you're too much for me, or I don't like this, or I'm stressed and this is the only way I can manage myself. And so I wanted to, so two things. I'm going to guide us in a little practice around that because I want to invite us to sort of a sense of how we might address that. Um, but I just want to see if this resonates for you with your experience and anything that you'd like to share that's coming up for you about these two observations. And then we'll do a guided practice together.
David, I'm very caught on your, if we are mad at someone, we are also partly mad at ourselves. Is that the right wording?
Yes.
I'd like to know a bit more about that, I think.
Sure. Well, there's many. I could answer you as a Jungian. I could answer you in a lot of ways, but I'm going to answer you.
Answer me
Uh,
as David.
I, um, I think what really, in a weird way, I had not didn't have this intention, but what came out for me was I just got this deep felt sense of the absurdity of imagining that we're separate, and and it allowed me to have I've all my life I've been somebody, they have fancy names now. I don't believe in those kind of names much, but I've been highly sensitive to sound all my life. I can hear things most people don't hear. I get really overwhelmed by loud noises, giant crowds, too much chaos.
I'm in the
And
same crowd with you.
yeah, it was really, and these people, everything was so loud and so over the top. But so then all of us introverts would find each other and go off and talk, and so I started having this feeling of um, we make up and not that there's not truth or there's not reasons to call people out on things or challenge people or speak our mind. So it's not, but this whole sense of this artificial dualities we create between ourselves and others, and this sense of which then leads to judgments. I'm better than you, or you know, or I'm less than you, or and that, and we end up projecting so much onto other people and onto the world. And then and I feel like then at sort of a more cosmic level and cellular level, then but if it's all just matter that keeps rearranging itself over time, um, and then it just seemed like we're getting mad at the universe, or it started to feel again, not that we can't have opinions, we can't have arguments, we can't fight against things we don't, we think are wrong. So it just means I just started having this sense of um, uh, is that really of service to our own body to make these artificial boundaries that I'm here and you're not? Is it what is it about our modern life that makes it too difficult for people to just be with each other? And and you know, I remember when the Walkman first came out, that was kind of a novelty, but most people did that on holiday or you mostly didn't wear it around town much. Most people and then I just wonder about that where this goes. Where that would just accelerate further, where we don't talk to anybody, but and we only can survive in our bubble. We all become like one of those kids in the movies, these that live in those bubbles, right? And that's who we become. And then we lose t touch with the earth, we lose touch with nature, we lose touch with each other, and ultimately ironically, we lose touch with ourselves because we are not an isolated thing. We're part of all kinds of ecosystems and relationships and responsibilities and opportunities. And I just feel like, I don't know, I was having this real, because I was feeling really isolated in an event that didn't really appeal to how I prefer to be in the world. So I was feeling ostracized and we tried to make some requests for some changes and got nowhere. So most of us just sort of having as alternate universe gathering just to go create space for ourselves. We would just leave and go to the foyer with our glass of wine and just chat. And that was our way of building communion and connection that we did not feel in the rah, 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 rah in the big room. Um, yeah.
Do you think there's an element of tribalism here? I mean, humans have always been tribal,
Yes.
uh, and to some extent, you were there because you decided to form a smaller group. Uh,
Yes.
so, is that what's going on in society today? The reason why I say that is because actually, with the season changing here, we've suddenly put the clocks back, and
Yeah.
the evenings are now dark and so forth. And I noticed the other day, to your point about going out and seeing people plugged into their devices or, this looking at their phones, out walking the dog. So I went out the other day, and I go out walking every day with our dog, and I just went out. The sun was shining. I just happened to be out earlier than I normally am, and every single person I met said good morning to me. And that
Mm.
doesn't happen. So some
Wow.
days you just go out and everybody's in their own world. And for some reason that morning, and I think it's because of the weather, the sun, and maybe it's the time of day because I was out with
Yeah.
people earlier in the day and so forth. So, but I do think there's a strong sense of tribalism, and in our globalized world, to some extent, it's more acute because we get to see so many more different tribes than we ever did. So.
Yeah. And then conversely, from the vestiges of the pandemic, where we were so isolated for so long, and and I don't think we ever really paid enough attention to what that cost us. Um, and so I just really worry about this. And I was always just noticing about how returning back to some of my traditions from when I was younger, how we might help ourselves feel more connected. So we have that feeling you're describing, Erland, even in ourself. And so we don't have as much need to put up walls or barriers or isolate ourselves, but actually could just be in the presence of people. And so I started experimenting with that as I went outside a few times to go for walks, and I had about a 15-minute walk through town from my hotel to the venue. And I tried this little spiritual practice of how far out from myself could I extend my energy to hold what was happening around me as I was walking. It was fascinating. And there were times like, "Urgh," especially there was, and then you start noticing all kinds of things. Like my favorite was this guy clearly a long-term homeless person. I probably had some mental health visitations, let's just say. And there's these three kind of blokes that were kind of giving him a bit of a hard time, and he was just asking for a bit of money. And and then, but he was like a philosophy professor. Why don't you see me? What makes it so hard for you to see me? Why can't you accept me? This is who I am. I don't want to be here either, but I need things to get by. And they're like just totally befuddled because he was actually more articulate than they were. And it was just fat, and he was quite impassioned. I feel so invisible. I don't have any love in my life. I'm stuck here. I'm just asking for some help so I can get some coffee, right? And then he went on, and there was a bit of delusional pieces that snuck in every now and then because he's not, but again, I was trying to allow myself. Normally, I'd kind of like veer around that and let that be. But then I was just walking, like, can I hold space for these three guys that feel trapped now by this guy? He wasn't dangerous, but I was just curious, would they be willing to kind of face up to what they were doing and that they were giving him a hard time? And just I was just trying to experiment like an accordion. How much energy could I hold? And watching myself interact with different people as I walked by different situations. You have to be full on present to survive downtown London because it's pretty intense. Um, and I just found that it's a great laboratory to start to experiment with this. So, Robert, you had your hand up.
Thank you, David. I'm delighted to be here first. I've missed uh,
Yeah.
several months, three, maybe more, last extremely intense period of my life, lots of transitions, lots of big changes. And that this is exactly the work that I'm doing now is embodiment. It is
Okay.
the unification of theory and practice, that this is the kernel of our dilemma is that
Yeah.
our smart ass head is taken over from our lived experience and the heart, which is the actual regulator of our body. It's not the
Hmm.
head. The head is more like an executive assistant, and the heart is the
I like
chairman
that.
of the board. And the president serves at the pleasure of the chairman of the board. And right now, the chairman of the board is pretty pissed off about
Hmm.
the state of the world because
Hmm.
that the unconscious or semi-conscious, only barely semi-conscious executive assistant has taken over.
Hmm.
I'm thinking of Ian McCragy's masterwork, The Master and His Emissary,
Hmm.
that is, I think, a much better, in my experience and my understanding, it is a much better description of our human reality than
Yeah.
anything that quote unquote science has come up with so far. Anyway, that this is what I'm at work on, is how to live in my body and not in my head and
Hmm.
interact with the people to expand my space or contract it as the what I call the reality wave passes by, or I'm carried along by the reality wave, and how to surf the reality wave, how to shift my position or shift my positionality or my attitude or my actions so that I can surf the reality wave and not be swept away by it,
Hmm.
or to be um, to be taken somewhere I don't particularly really want to go. And that is an art. It's not like technique. It's not a how-to. It's a question of being. And we don't investigate being so much. And that's what you do, David. That's why I have
Yeah.
such respect for your work, is that that's what you're
Hmm.
working on. And I ramble on, so I'm gonna leave it at that for now. And
Thank you.
I'm really interested in this conversation here.
Great. Um, Ellen.
Um, I don't think of it as embodiment specifically, but I so resonate to what you're talking about. First of all, your cosmology fits with my spirituality. I mean, I
Hmm.
have a fundamental belief in oneness
Hmm.
and that we're all connected. Um, and that, the atoms that the air that I'm breathing, like who knows who breathed it 1,000 years ago, and
Yeah.
that I'm inhaling air from the vegetation around me and I'm exhaling air for the plants around me to breathe. And the disconnection that we have from one another is so painful. I work with a group of people called Healing Together, and what what we're trying to do, what they have been trying to do for a long time, is to bring people together across the Israel-Palestine or Jewish-Palestine divide because there's so much dehumanization, and to bring people together to reconnect as human beings. And it's so painful to see how hard that is for people all
Mm.
around us to not be able to see one another's humanity and to realize that we are so fundamentally connected to each other.
Mm. Mm.
So I'm just very moved by what you're saying.
Well, thanks. Yeah. Anybody else want to chime in with anything that's coming up for you? Mm. So I'll offer one more example of this about, it picks up on part of what I heard you say, Ellen, and then we'll move into our practice. So, as some of you know, I used to do retreats before the pandemic, and I traveled all over the world doing these retreats, and I love them. It was my happiest thing to do in many ways. But and in there, yeah, anyway, so I had an opportunity to do a coaching session, or a David session, as I would call it, with somebody that I could bring back some of those practices and skills to work around a trauma that this person had experienced. And in working with the trauma, they had always held the trauma as this, which was a challenge around their birth experience. But then as we dealt more into a deeper embodiment of memory and story, and they went from, oh, this was not pleasant, to, oh, I came within a few seconds of dying. And you could watch all their whole system just kind of like recalibrate itself. I now have to start from a fundamental different story about the origin of my own life. Um, and what really helped them in the conversation, and picking up a bit on your point, Robert, you could watch them go right up into their head of all the realization and all the, the emotion, all the, how could they have let that happen? And there's no way to solve that. That just, your head's gonna, is it, you just, there's nothing to do with that. So I was able to kind of help her come back down into her body, not to solve anything or fix anything, but just to realize you've got a container of your whole self to hold this experience while it reformulates in you and reintegrates in you. And so one of the things about trauma is that it's not stored as a narrative; it's stored as fragments. So I said, but your body has the capacity, with help over time, of starting to remetabolize all those fragments. I say that because I watched what happens, and I think goes back to what both of you were saying, that part of why people are distracting themselves, I believe, is because they're trying to manage all this with their head. And most of modern life doesn't make any sense in many ways. And we're arguing over stupid things, and we're being mean to we're being more cruel to each other than we have been in a long time. And we forget again that it's a cliche, but it's true that we're all in this together. We will sink or swim together. Um, and and um, yeah, and so for me, it was just a really helpful reminder of how hard it is for folks to find a way to be with things that are difficult for them. And and then let alone how to be with other people with whom we have difficulty. Um, and so I just think for me, the body in place and the body allowing itself to be sourced by place just feels like an important strategy for being in this time. Um, so if anybody else has anything else they want to add or offer, that'd be great. Otherwise, we can do a little practice together. Okay. So I will just guide you. I'll turn off my camera. You're welcome to turn off your camera if you'd like to. I mean, it doesn't, just so you have privacy, but if that's important to you, if not, don't worry about it. And then if you would just close your eyes and settle into wherever you're seated and just allow yourself to just pause for a minute and just sit with whatever is like little waves washing through you based on the conversation we've already been having to see kind of what shows up for you. And as you continue to allow your breath to relax, so there's no effort required, your body knows exactly how to breathe. And in many traditions in the world, they look at the sky often as a source of guidance, a source of light. Sometimes it's sort of given masculine identities. And I think that's a really challenging space for most of us at the moment, more than we're used to, maybe. So I'd like you just to allow yourself to imagine that there's a gentle breeze blowing through the air around you. And that we're going to do some things in our meditation to allow that breeze to keep blowing, allowing ourselves to be present to the sky around us, but to allow it such that it can be spacious for us, not bracketed, protected, walled off, but it can just continue to blow. So maybe you might even notice your upper body might sway a little bit in the wind. And if your head is feeling heavy, what if you just let it go a bit and let it sort of settle on your neck? As if it's sort of gently wafting in the breeze. There's nothing to hold on to in your head. But now I want you, and if this would help you to stand up, it may be more powerful, but if you need to sit or want to sit, that's fine too. Whatever you do, I'd like you to feel the earth beneath your feet. And again, if you want to be closer, you can take your shoes off. But just feel, if you can, what is underneath your feet. In many traditions, this is often associated with the feminine and the notion of grounding. And oftentimes, this is where, in some traditions, they would send their heavier energies to be held by the earth. And for me, I find the earth just such a powerful reminder that we're just one speck in the universe and we're part of a long history on a planet. And while some of the grounds have been debated about and fought over for centuries and millennia, I look at that more as a function of the sky than the earth itself. The earth recognizes no boundaries, has no borders. There are no enemies to the earth. And so for you, I'd like you just to imagine this. What or where do you connect most with the earth? Maybe it's a place you've been, maybe it's people you can stand with. What is it that allows you to feel most grounded and most connected? It could be ancestry, it could be whatever it comes up for you in this moment in time. And as you do so, just notice what's happening to the rest of your body. You might notice that maybe your breathing's a bit more relaxed because your brain's not exhausted from having to carry so much. You might feel a bit lighter because you've given back some of the heavy things you've been carrying. And as we prepare to close the meditation, just reflect for a minute for yourself. How could you have this more often in your life that brings you a greater sense of whatever you need, but allows you also to stay more present to the people around you? And when you're ready, I'd like to invite you just to open your eyes and come back to the room. Um, I'm going to invite you to just reflect in quiet. If you want to take some notes for yourself, please do. And I'll give you a couple minutes for that, and then we'll come back and share as a group. If you want to keep writing, please keep writing. And I'd like to just give any of you who would like to a chance to share.
Well, sure, David, it's Colleen.
Yeah, okay, Colleen.
So it was interesting with the grounding immediately when I put my feet on the floor, I could feel a strong connection as if there was a magnet there. And even
Wow.
when you talked about maybe a feeling of lightness, I'd even got heavier in my hips, my legs, and my feet
Wow.
of really grounding into the earth.
Right.
And so when you were talking about when we're with others, and I was thinking about the connection, I was imagining my feet grounded and connected to the earth, and that connection traveling through the earth to
Mm-hmm.
that other person. And it was like and that connection going, through the space back to me again.
Mm-hmm.
So it really
Yeah,
helped that connection.
wonderful. It's like all those trees in the forest that share all their roots and
Mhm.
feed each other and care for each other.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You gave me that book, by the way.
I do remember that. Yes. Mm.
I had a rather unusual experience. As soon as you said there was a breeze blowing, my whole right side went cold,
Wow.
especially around my ear. It still is a bit
Yeah, I can
really
see.
cold. Like I was feeling the. As soon as you said it, and I was like, okay, not sure I fully understand this, but okay.
And how does it seem to you now? Like what did you where did you end up with this?
I'm happy to accept I don't quite get it, but it happened.
Okay, and that's fine. Well, again, that's actually for me. It goes back to what I was saying. There's so much that happens that when we try to understand it, we often can't or don't and probably shouldn't. And part of the wisdom of the groundedness is keeps our head from having to scurry after every little thing to try to make sense of it or interpret it or label it or
I'd like to say, David, this is an indication of my maturation based on work I've done with you previously.
excellent. Well, go right
Just
ahead.
saying, because in the past I would have wanted to understand it, whereas now I've learned to
I,
just, it is what it is, and that's okay.
and I would observe. I've seen that in you since last year, and how how you would frame a lot of you, or you're framing what's your experience differently than you did before. I can see that in you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'll happily accept that. Thank you.
yeah, yeah.
And Colin and I have had many discussions. One only yesterday, I think it was about. Remember what David said?
Yeah, but you often described yourself in the past in relationship to your loss and to your doctoral work and all that kind of stuff, and you're showing up differently now.
Well, I did just have a milestone birthday on the weekend, David. So maybe that's all part of that too. I don't know.
You turned 50. Excellent. Well done.
Oh yeah, with a few years' experience. Thanks. Quite a number. Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah. Is there anybody else that would like to share? Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, Ellen. To find you again. There you are.
Um, so I went where I always go for peace and grounding, and that's the ocean. Um, I could feel my feet sinking into the sand, my toes.
Mm.
And it's always such an interesting experience because you kind of feel so grounded, but also everything's moving.
Hmm.
Um, what I love about being at the ocean, or just imagining being at the ocean, is that there's such a sense of infinity there and connection to everything.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, the sound of the waves is very soothing, but it feels that's the place where I feel the most deeply connected to everything and
Hmm.
across time and space.
Hmm.
And my therapist just told me that you can live stream any beach you want. I had no idea. So,
There you go. There you go. I want to share two anecdotes to kind of build on this and see if that maybe prompts other things as well. So, if I remember correctly, I was reading something about the problems they have with tree farms. In a lot of places, they replace native forests with faster growing wood, but they often are very prone to wind damage, and they were trying to figure out why. And what they realized was because they try to pack in the trees so much um, that the trees never get strong. There's actually a certain kind of wood at the core of a tree that's dependent on wind to develop itself and to resist the wind. And because these are all packed together, they never develop that wood, so it makes very fragile wood. And so they often are prone to being knocked over, ironically, by the wind, if it does come. And so I thought about that again in terms of when we don't have a grounding in ourself, and which then allows us to sustain, weeks like you've had, Ellen. I know we don't have that because we don't have that strength that only comes through moving through that. And for me, I just finding things that ground us in those difficult times are things we can then bank on because we've built up that capacity in ourselves. And I saw that really practically and going back to this notion of being isolated from each other at this event. Um, I just randomly on the second night they had this sort of gala, and most people were in tuxes and all kinds of stuff that I really couldn't be bothered with. So there was some of us that were sort of playing a bit of rebel, and we wore less fancy things. But I was sitting with, and we were sort of like sharing some of our struggles with the event, and kind of maybe a little bit of, whatever. And I ended up in this conversation with this fascinating woman who works at a university. And through the course of the early part of that conversation, she was sharing that part of why she was sitting down so much is she has a chronic illness that now has gotten to a stage where it probably will kill her. So we had this extraordinary conversation. And again, going back to this, like in the Karo tradition in Peru, I spent a fair bit of time with them. And this notion of when you ground yourself in the roots, you see the connections with everything. And when we started to realize that we were sort of distancing ourselves from this culture of this event that was not us, they became the them, and we were the us. When we did the work, we had this conversation, and she could actually be met in sharing openly about what was happening for her and go into this very deep conversation about how difficult it is for cultures and companies and universities and that stuff to deal with grief. And there's grief everywhere right now at so many levels. And what we found is that as we dropped deeply into the roots of her current lived experience, and her daughter has the same genetic issue, and so she is worried about that as well. As we drop farther and farther at this, all of our judgments about the people in their penguin suits dropped away. And we now became part of the same room. And we could see them as who they were and why that was important to them. And that was just fine. We were over here having our own private conversation among four people gathered around a small table in this giant hall. And even the hall felt like it was now enveloping us. So we could have this little moment of at a table, almost a sacred table. And so for me, if I go back to when we artificially cut ourselves off, sometimes we want to just relax, but when we do it sort of habitually, I find we don't recognize there's all these things around us that could support us. And 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 then ironically, like to come full circle, I find that people have less patience and tolerance because the wood that forms in the high wind never got to happen. That never formed because they didn't allow any wind in. And so they're very shallow rooted, they're very brittle, They're not very resilient. They're good for making cheap furniture, but not much else. And so I just thought about that analogy of comparing this piece about the wind. There's a name, I don't remember it from botany, but there's a name for that. It's a very specific kind of wood that forms only in high wind in trees. And the people with their headphones and the people in their tuxedos. Um, yeah. Robert.
Thank you, David. I had a lovely time. Um, my current favorite mantra as I do my meditations usually is I am one with spirit always, always.
Mm,
That the perennial philosophy that is, if anyone is not familiar with the perennial philosophy, it's basically one, it's actually four statements. The first one is the really important one, which is that there's only one thing, and that's everything. And the other three are kind of corollaries or the results of that understanding. And all the dogmas and all the theories and the philosophies and the analysis is all commentary
mm,
about the one thing which is invisible and is undetectable by human means. Because as we're being particles of individual humans, we cannot at the same time, by the rules, as far as I understand the rules, is that we cannot see the wave that we are
mm,
also at that same
mm,
moment, that we are both particle and wave, and it is the determination of being a particle that makes us particles instead of the wave.
mm,
So it's invisible except as context. That context is not examined because it's invisible. We cannot detect
mm,
context. We can see
mm,
the results of the context. We see the consequences and we see the conditions of the context. We cannot see the context itself except by surmise or by experience. And experience is the result of results. That the only the way that I can tell what's real and what is my embodied experience is by seeing what are my results.
mm,
And when I look at my results, I have some inkling, I have some clue as to what's going on. Otherwise, I am literally clueless. I can't
mm,
see it. I can't, how do you deal with something you cannot see or you
mm,
cannot directly experience? And so the critical context context is critical, and that the one share one deep insight that is so much a part of my current work, which is the realization by uh, the premier historian of the spiritual fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, Harvard trained historian who got a hold of the AA archives when they first opened up before they got closed in by protective people who wanted to protect the archives and that historical record. And Ed Kurtz has been studying the spirit, or he's passed on now, but he studied the philosophy and the spiritual fellowship of AA for 30 or 40 years, all of his entire adult career. And what he came to near the end of his life, just days before his his demise, he was interviewed by another big gun in the addiction medicine field, Bill White, and he had revealed this conclusion that he had come to that uh, of studying AA meetings around the world for 40 years was that there was a new element of these in these meetings, and that the the there had been up until his realization, or recently, relatively recently, last few decades, there was the agnostic atheist branch that said this is a spiritual fellowship. It has nothing to do with religion. And whatever religion you have, you like, whatever you like, fine, do that. But this is not that. This is a spiritual fellowship. It's not a religion. And a lot of people didn't get that. And they said, well, I'm going to call my higher power Jesus. And the Christians formed another block, or whatever specialty religion that they chose, that was how their God was, their higher power. And so those were sort of the two main formulations. And that the last few decades, he noticed a new formulation, which he
Hmm.
called secular spirituality, in which um, the concern is not so much what the labels are, but it is the context, and that what secular spirituality is about is that place beyond and between the particles. But we don't focus on that because we can't see it.
Hmm.
It's evidentiary only in its results.
Hmm.
And that our empiricism, our Western tradition of empiricism, blinds us to that unity that is fundamental reality, that the
Hmm.
quantum physics now says, yes, this is fundamental reality. It's both a particle and a wave. And the head says, oh, no, that can't be. It's a
Hmm.
particle or it's a wave. And it loses it. It says, no,
Hmm.
that can't be. That's my existential reality. And if it's that true, then who the hell am I?
Hmm.
And it becomes literally an issue that we're willing to kill or die for. It's
Hmm.
a silly question. It's not so silly because who we are is our experience. And let me, I ramble on and I talk too much, but let me cut to the chase. When you ask what grounds and centers me, I actually had to look at that question.
Hmm.
What first came was it's my new first best ever love that I've discovered after 76 years of searching, and a number of come close encounters but didn't quite work. And she's it. She's the twin flame. She is my perfect
Hmm.
partner. And it was love at first sight for both of us. We both knew there they are. That's them. And that was 4 months ago. And we're planning on getting married.
Wow.
Delightfully happy with that situation. And things are looking extremely hopeful and good. And this is not kind of infatuation. We're both
Yeah.
adults. She's 60. I'm 76. Younger women, I've always liked younger women. so, 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 and I first thought it's her. That's what grounds and centers me. And then I looked closer and I said, no, it's the relationship that I have with her and the relationship that I have with other people. And this is the open, obvious secret of relationship is what is important, not hierarchy, not who's in charge, not the difference and the comparison and the compare and contrast that we're used to using for analysis. That's misleading. It's
Hmm.
useful as a tool, certainly, but it's the relationship that's important in life. And the relationship occurs only and always in the moment.
Hmm.
If there's no moment, there's no relationship. Because a
Hmm.
relationship is a two-way street or it's a scam.
Hmm.
Unless it's a two-way street and both are participating and engaged, it's a scam or it's some kind of manipulation. It's
Hmm.
not a real relationship. There's no investment of the heart, which is the heart of
Hmm.
the matter. And I'll leave it at that. Thank
All
you.
right. Well, I'm happy for you, Robert. Yeah. Hmm. So for each of you, like, what are you taking from this that might be helpful for you and however you find yourself these days? Karen, I'm curious. Oh, Colleen.
Sorry,
Colleen.
I was going to
Karen despises
say,
Colleen.
I'm going to say it's a lot of it's been my journey over the last 2 to 3 years and my work with you, David, and the greater awareness I have of myself,
Hmm.
and that is creating a lot more peace and calm and groundedness for me.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful.
It seems worthy of exploring context that Robert brought up. You know, Robert, you said
Right.
context cannot be seen,
Mm-hmm.
and yet context is the place that we return to be grounded.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an interesting paradox and curiosity.
Yeah.
Mm.
But if I pick up, Robert, on one of your themes, I go back to my conversation, which I can sort of teleport myself back into it right now, but with the woman at the table and sharing about her, where her health journey was at now. And I feel like, those kind of moments that you were saying, Robert, and it's why that's why my business is named what it is. In those moments, there's little portals that take us into those roots, right? It's why people have church and synagogue, and they're just those reminders, those traditions, rituals, communities that open up it exists all the time. Um, but if we to certain forms, sometimes we can find it more easily than others, and I think those moments then provide reminders. Um, and for me, we had a session earlier today with our people in our ID design studio, and the official program is over. And so now, well, we were offering them some extra sessions because they're all working on projects, and for various reasons, some of them weren't making as much progress on their projects as they had hoped. And so we have some extra sessions, and so I could just be myself as opposed to have to teach them anything. And several of them commented like, "You just seem so much more relaxed." I said, "Just because I'm not worried about. Do you understand what I'm saying? And how is it? Am I somehow inhibiting your capacity to finish your project?" And we could just be people talking to each other, and so I could feel more rooted. We people, ironically, um, which is what I wanted in the beginning, but then they wanted more structure, and then I gave them more structure, and then I realized that we weren't actually being ourselves. We were so caught up in the structure. So I abandoned the structure and said, we're just going to have open forum for 90 minutes. And we made more progress than we had in weeks. Um, yeah. Darcy.
Well, it's interesting, you know, you asked what is coming up,
Hmm.
and it takes me back actually to the beginning of our conversation today
Okay.
when Robert was talking about the brain being the executive assistant
Mm.
and the heart being the chairman. And then I can't remember whether it was Carol or Ellen or Colleen who was talking about um, you know, when we breathe in, we're breathing the air that other people are breathing.
Hmm.
We're we're breathing in a lot of stuff that used to be something else.
Uh-huh.
And it it compelled me to quickly Google a poem that I heard last week or the week before. And it was called the Anatomy of Peace by John Rodell. Do any of you know it?
No.
No? I'll put it in the chat.
Mm.
It's really about, well, my interpretation of it anyway. I'll let you decide for yourself what it's about. But it's your head being so wrapped up in thinking about the future that you're full of anxiety, and your heart being so heavy with memories that you grieve where you used to be. Um, and how this poem is about the two of them being divorced. And, you know, we're talking about connection today. So I'll put that poem in the chat in case it means something to anybody else, but that's what came up for me. The urge to read that poem and also visit my favorite tree. I have a tree that I visit. I've got to name it someday. But this tree represents all of the beautiful, wise women for some reason. It's female.
Okay.
Who have impacted what's going on with me probably for the last 200 years. Because
Wow.
I did Google what kind of tree it is, and I did give the measurements to ChatGPT, and it came out that it's about 230 years old. So it's got a lot of wisdom in there.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you. And I would offer the possibility that the tree already has a name.
Yeah, I should
No, in the sense of it revealing it to you as opposed to you having to find a name for it.
I think that's what I'm waiting for, David.
Yeah.
Yeah, for it to
Yeah.
just, let me know.
Yeah. Hmm. 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 All right, here we go. Oh yeah, I was going to say, there's Robert. So have you read Ian's new 1600 page two-book series?
I have not. I've
Okay.
my usual methodology is to extract uh, major ideas
Yeah.
from reviews and from excerpts
Yeah.
and from interviews and
Sure.
videos made by that person. And my neurodiversity does not permit me to get through 1,600 pages of heavy, dense
I can imagine
material
that.
that is a
Anyways,
challenge for people better than I.
or at least different than you are. I'll put it.
Different, at least
Yeah.
that.
Anyways, there's some really wonderful interviews with Ian when he goes into the essence of those two books. He takes The Master and the Emissary farther and just remind us how we live in a world mostly in the West, not all of the world, but a lot of the world that's very overly dominated by the left hemisphere, which is part of our problem because it's more biased. It doesn't see as much. Most of our experiences through our right hemisphere but we need the left hemisphere for certain things, but then the left hemisphere clings onto it and doesn't want to give it back to the right hemisphere, which, yeah. And so anyways, I find it really interesting in terms of how do we stay grounded and out of the cobwebs in our mind. So,
I'll take this opportunity to share the one of the key insights that's guiding me lately, which is that two of the great thinkers that I admire most from all of my many sources is Karl Marx, who I assert invented sociology and doesn't get credit for that. He took his history degree from Cambridge and his doctorate in philosophy and used them not to get a career in politics, which is the sort of the one of the main avenues for that background in those days. And he became a political economist and a theoretician of the political because that was what was the demand in those days when kingdoms were falling apart and countries were falling apart all around him. But that in his early research in the British Reading Room, when he spent 10 years in the British Reading Room researching to get the empirical data of what was going on with people, and he determined in his early writings, uh, one which is which is known as the Grundrisse, the ground plan, the groundwork, uh, was that there was a spirituality
mm,
that was fundamental to primitive humans, primitive being early or tribal humans, and that the other great thinker that I admire is well, following. I should include, out of respect, the feminist giant of socialism, Rhea Donetskaya, who was the personal secretary for Leon Trotsky and went on from there to be fundamental to most of the evolution of socialism for the next 50 years or so in her career. And she created she's credited with creating Marxist humanism or humanist socialism. And this idea that the human spirit is what motivates society, and that God is a label that confuses us because we don't understand it. We're not capable of understanding it, but we can't stand the idea that there's something that's so fundamental to our lives that we have no clue about that. So, and that's, by the way, the other great thinker that I like is also a woman named the she wrote the book Eichmann in Jerusalem and was a great authority on fascism and authoritarianism.
Hannah Arendt.
Some even know that name.
Hannah Arendt.
Hannah Arendt, right? Hannah Arendt and and Marx both agreed that alienation was at the root of authoritarianism, and that it's loneliness and being isolated from our place in time and our context of the world, the isolation of that makes us, or the isolation that comes from being individualized and being atomized as only this little meaningless piece of meat. And that is why we become victims of unscrupulous sociopaths who promise us membership in their little club if we will just agree to do whatever they say, and we'll be your salvation. We'll give you a place to live. We'll accept you as long as you accept our leadership and our theories about the way the world is supposed to be, and follow and do whatever we say. And then, of course, they steal everything from you, including your soul. But they will give you this identity that you've lost somehow because religion. And it's not that religion is bad. Religion is the other side of spirituality. That spirituality is the theory, and religion is the practice. Religion is a social function. It's what keeps us from killing one another. It gives us guidelines and kind of helps us agree on certain things so we're on the same page for big projects. And there's many good things about religion, but we get confused about what it's not spirituality. This is where AA had its breakthrough, that religion and spirituality are separate but equal. And as Einstein said, religion without science is blind, but science without religion is lame. How do you deal with all this power that science gives us? We don't do well with power if it's not constrained with guidelines. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
That's my current work.
In my funny little mind, it all makes sense, Robert. It weaves in quite nicely. Yeah. And just to go back to where we started and talking about our mind and our heart, where we began in the very, very beginning of the conversation. I'm wondering how your heart feels in the midst of all this. You've had a lot of stimulation in your mind, some in your body, and I'm just wondering how your heart feels. And if expensive. Yeah. Uh, is it Jack? How do you say your first name?
Yes, it's Jack.
Jack, okay.
Hi, David. Hi,
Hi.
all. When you talk about how the heart is feeling coming into this space for the first time, I'm in Sydney in Australia.
Okay.
I can feel my heart racing in a similar way to just being aware of the conversation and how I am experiencing it. Our conversation today
Okay.
is similar to when I first started to meditate. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I was just somebody else just came into the room, so I wanted to let Indy go, and so sorry.
No, that's okay. When I first began to meditate, and it was overwhelming to even sit still for just a couple of moments. It was just to become aware of all the noise, to begin to become aware of all the noise. And I guess it's a little bit of a similar experience coming into this space, which feels so calm and welcoming, and the content, the things that we've talked about and that people have shared, the experience of that in the context of all the noise that came with me arriving here today.
Yeah.
But one other thing, if I can share, I related, Ellen, to you saying about the grounding and the ocean. That's what first came to me too. And I thought, that's interesting because it's not the ground. It's moving and it's sort of alive. And for me, it's lying with my ears under the water, like floating in the waves. And part of, I think, of what I enjoy about that, not only the experience, like myself, but also that it is with others. So in terms of that connection, David, that even though I may be there on my own, there are usually other people in the water who are also enjoying that experience. And so there is an element of together there too, for me.
Carol's also from that part of the world, and I lived in Clovelly for 4 years. So I know that part of the world well. So yeah, and I have many, many fun memories of body surfing at Bronte Beach and having that sensation of the water and people around me. So I can relate. Yeah. How about others? Indigo, welcome. I haven't seen you for a while. Good to see you again.
Thank you. It's wonderful to even get a smidgen of this today. And hopefully December will not be compressed like today turned out.
Okay.
Yeah.
You doing okay?
Yes. In fact, part of the reason I'm compressed, I'm being flown back by my work for a luncheon, and I'm, amongst others, being honored for my work.
Oh,
So,
wonderful.
yeah, it's happy.
Good for you.
And I miss you guys.
Yeah.
And yeah, we shall see what the future brings. How are you liking it in your new home, David?
It's turned out a bit differently than I anticipated, but I'm enjoying my daily life, and the future seems more opaque at the moment. I'm not sure what the long-term plan is going to be. This allows me to be closer to my daughter in Germany. I don't think she's going to leave there, so that's the most important part to me right now, and that and time on my bike. So. Yeah, it's going well. It's different than I imagined in some ways, but it's going well.
Good. Yay.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
Thanks.
David, there in your visualization, or right before the visualization, you talked about you have a container of whole self to access.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious. And you also talked about energy and bringing it in and taking it out. So the concept of whole self and the expansiveness and retraction of it. I'm just wondering how people are within their own container as we are closing out today.
Are you asking them to share that, Karen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
And Ireland, I can't help but look at the wave. We've talked about waves and particles so much, and there you have a nice little image.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, famous Japanese paintings.
It's actually Lego.
Oh,
It's
is
a
it
Lego,
really?
it's a Lego painting, yeah.
Really?
Wow.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
one of the panelists at the event I was at was the CEO of Lego. So I thought, coolest job ever to be the CEO of Lego. Yeah. Um, yeah.
Well, you get to build all kinds of cells with that, right?
Yeah. But part of it for me, and this is where in previous sessions we've often worked a lot with breath, but the breath allows us to kind of move with what we're experiencing and allow ourselves to relax. And so when things happen that we have judgments about, then just letting them fall back and say, do I really need to say anything about this? Or how does this fit in the bigger picture I can't see? And um, and I think like Robert, I just want to celebrate you that you've your awareness of yourself has grown since I first met you, which makes all these wonderful things you share even that much more potent. Um, yeah. And allowing yourself to breathe with the group. Everybody's on their own journey, being here in their own way, trying to find their space. And I find in this work for me um, uh, that it just allows me to move. When I'm allowing myself to feel free, it allows me to move with whatever occurs, and there's less jagged edges to things.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah. And if there's less jagged edges, there's less, yeah, cutting and yeah, less, yeah, energy that's not used well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I very much relate to Jack's image of floating in the water, or even
Mm,
being a neutral buoyancy under the water, where you have this sort of, if you look at the kelp or whatever sea life, it has this motion to it, but yet you can angle yourself and move at any moment within the spaciousness of it all. So, right.
I remember, I think I shared this story once before, but when we were in Hawaii, we had been told there was a space where the turtles like to come, these gigantic turtles, and they would be near the where the waves crash against these rocks because the waves would loosen up things in the rock that they could eat. But then, so we sat, and this is like this. I'm sure this must be what heaven is like if there's a heaven. But we were floating with the turtles right in front of the rocks for like half an hour.
Oh, wow.
And they're like literally within like a foot of me. There's like 4 or 5 gigantic turtles all around us, and we're all just doing this in the waves. And because of the way the water goes, you never smash into the rocks. You always just on this sort of like almost like elevator of water going up and down because it kind of hits the rocks and comes back, and it creates this little like up and down motion. But
Hmm.
I remember just I remember at one point, I think looking at this turtle, literally I could touch him if I reached out my hand fully. And I said, "Hey, dude, how's it going over there? What are you feeling?" "I'm feeling really good. How are you doing?" And yeah, it was quite something. And I thought, wow, what would it be like to live that way more often? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I use the metaphor of watching the seaweed a lot
Mm,
in my life, just like you described just
yeah.
now with that motion, and just being able to be with that flex, that flow, and not have to do anything about it. Just
Mm,
be with it.
yeah. Mm,
I know I've shared too much, or maybe I didn't, but I feel compelled to acknowledge that this idea of being a container, of a spacious container for
mm,
energy, and that I can contract and expand to deal with
mm,
the energy that's present instead of either missing out of contracting too much and missing out on that wonderful energy, or else expanding too much and have the energy explode me or
mm,
damage me because I can't handle that much at one time. And this idea of that being a container of energy and having less attention on my Robert story, because it's one of my oldest realizations and my oldest teachings that I absorbed into my heart was the work of Werner Erhard, a, a,
mm,
an erased visionary philosopher who looked at being a lot. That was a lot of what he dealt with, and that being a container for this energy. And mentioning your story about turtles, David, reminded me, and I will close with this whimsical but now revealed to me as quite profound poem by Ogden Nash. It goes, it's about the turtle. He goes, the turtle lives twixt plated decks, which practically conceal its sex. I think it clever of the turtle in such a fix to be so fertile.
Okay. Excellent.
Hmm.
It feels like to me like we're at a good place for closure, but I just want to see if there's anything else that
Yeah.
anybody wants to share before we go.
I'm going to place in the chat just a few little links for those who are new here.
Okay.
To find this has been recorded, as you're noticing, and we have a YouTube channel that you can access all the recordings. So if you go into the BCE, once you register, for those of you who are completely new to the Moment Institute, you can register and then just go in and find all these links. So I'm just gonna put all the links into the chat that give you access to the various things. And leave that open for a few moments. There you go. And there's the direct link to the YouTube at the very end.
Great. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah. And lovely to be with you. And, you know, I'm struck by the less structure today that you were mentioning. And thank you all for giving it structure and the forming that came together. And that's me. Float with the seaweed.
All right. I look forward to seeing you next month when we have our next BCE. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy.
Welcome.
Bye-bye. Bye, Jeff. Thanks for coming.
Thank
Congratulations,
you.
Robert. Bye, Colleen.
Congratulations to you, David.
Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Good night. That was-
I've got another class at 11.
No.
Yeah.
With
I've
who?
got,
Us? The Moment
no,
Institute?
yeah,
Oh.
I've got the other half of the design studio session for today. And
Oh.
yeah.
How have you been up? Oh, I don't even want to know. All right.
You don't want to know.
I know, because I just feel sorry for you.
I do too. I want to go to bed now.
I know.
I'm praying to the gods that nobody comes. No, not really, actually, because
No,
I
we
really
could. I
enjoyed
was
it.
about to say what you said about half hour ago. I think we have had a good closing place. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's okay.
it's all fine. And I've got no more. I do the second of my two coaching.com sessions tomorrow, but that's the only work thing I'm going to have for the next 4 days. So I have a big there's a graduate an alliance of all the graduate schools that have coaching programs, and they had this like massive, like just obsessive document on academic standards for these programs, and then they wanted to write this book kind of unpacking them and talking about how people could use them and kind of trying to accelerate or advance graduate coaching education. It was this nightmare. But anyways, I got drafted. Just like it's so utterly pointless. It's just so utterly
I'm
pointless.
kind of so over all of it.
Yeah, but I got recruited by a dear friend who now unfortunately has passed away. Francine died a couple months ago, but to write the chapter on the standard around the incorporation of new knowledge and the production of new knowledge in graduate coaching education.
Well, that's a
But
good.
as you can imagine, what they gave us this outline is like it was like written by librarians in a monastery or in a nunnery or something. It's this
Who work at the DMV.
exactly. You got my exactly. That's her day job, and at night to come back and work in the nunnery's library.
Yeah.
So like the worst of all the worlds put together. And so I said, this is ridiculous. It's trying to squish new knowledge back into an old paradigm. So I wrote a David article, and this other guy's he's a eccentric, bright, Fulbright scholar. He's really a wonderful guy. We had a wonderful time writing that, interviewing people. But we completely broke the rules of how we were supposed to write our chapter. And so they didn't know what to do with us. But they also said, it's secretly the best chapter we have.
Right, right.
Yeah. And so and then they said, but they couldn't really put it in the book and where it's supposed to be because it wouldn't really fit. And so they're going to make it now the final closing chapter of the entire book. So now I've got to go back and rewrite parts of it so it plays that role officially and formally, not just coincidentally. So I'm
That
going to
means
get
you
that to
have
them.
to extract part of the previous chapter somehow and make it make sense.
No, I just have to kind of position. Before we were sort of pretending it was like the other chapters,
Oh,
and I have to take
oh,
that part out
now
and just
you're
let it be
talking.
full on. I mean, not we don't have to refer to the other chapters, but we have to write it as a conclusion to the book. And the editors, the two editors will come by and write something small at the very end. But we're like the
Mhm.
anyway. So I'm going to do that tomorrow, and then
Oh, just that. Crack me up. I only have this left to do. I just completed my book. I just You are the ocean. No.
I am the ocean.
You are the and that one that you recited about the sex of the turtle.
Uh, uh,
I'm like, I was with him, and then I thought, wait, what are we really talking about?
I felt so he had done. I mean, it's
He
still
done
Robert.
really well for a while. At one point, I was just about to,
I was
find a
too.
way.
I was too. But the good there's I think two things I appreciate. One, he's more aware of himself,
Yep.
and he actually says things that are. I mean, to some people it's probably outlandish and absurd, but he's actually more on point now than he was before.
There were some, I actually wrote down many things he said. There were
Yeah,
some interesting, profound things that he said. Some
yeah,
important things. Yeah.
yeah. And it takes a long time to get there, and he brings in too many things, but he's aware. He's like I said, on point. He's talking in relationship with us now, as opposed to Robert over here in his own world, just lobbing things into our space.
Which his final statement, other than the turtle, relationship is not a hierarchy.
Yeah,
It's a hierarchy. What is
yeah,
useful? Relationship occurs in the moment.
yeah, yeah,
Investment of the heart is the heart of the matter, which,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. And,
And
yeah, and so I'm very happy for him that I was trying to be affirming that I was just appreciating that he was more aware now, more focused, more he felt like part of the group now and not outside the group and didn't have to defend himself or be down on himself. And heck, he found love. So hey,
I know.
I,
And I love younger women.
ah,
Talk about that. Yeah, that's neat. Well, you, young man, have
yes,
another night ahead of you. Not just
I do.
good night.
I'll,
And I guess we'll just